Good morning and welcome in. This is 5 Clubs on Golf Channel.
You are a vital part of our game.
Thank you for having me on.
All the way to the greetings. Woo! Boy, was that fun.
I've always wanted to be on 5 Clubs. Thanks, Gary.
Good morning. Welcome into 5 Clubs live on a Masters Monday here on Golf Channel and also on Masters Radio. Normally, PGA Tour Radio, Channel 92 on Sirius XM. This week, it is Masters Radio. 2 hours for you today. I'm Gary Williams. Whether it's 1 or 2, and in this case, Masters Monday, every day, presented by Century Insurance. They invest in golf in great ways at every level, from the first tee to the USGA, and all the way to the PGA Tour, and right here at 5 Clubs. Their business is business insurance. Evaluate yours with them at Century Insurance. Over the course of the next 2 hours, we've got a lot to get to because these are special weeks that define careers. And we start with your tee sheet because some of the people whose careers have been defined by this, not only covering it by playing as well in the Masters tournament, but we will also honor those who get to the elusive winner circles on the various tours because we always start with your weekly winners. Jaime Diaz, his first Masters. He picked a good one, 1986. He will be with me in about 15 minutes, get his thoughts on this decade to start with. We're halfway through it, and I believe that every guy who's already won in this decade is going to the World Golf Hall of Fame. Ben Crenshaw is in the World Golf Hall of Fame in large measure because he won the Masters tournament twice, in addition to having a fabulous, wonderful career, one of the best college players, amateur careers as well, and of course, one of the best designers of golf courses around the world. Looking forward to a conversation with him at the bottom of the hour. The Rory repeat, it's only been done 3 times in the history of the Masters tournament. We'll take a quick look back on the last decade and the fact that these winners have struggled as well to even put themselves in position to contend to win. Jim Nantz, top of the next hour. His first Masters was also 1986. I mean, good timing, Jim. And, of course, he's stationed on to 16 when Nicklaus backed off and you had that incredible interlude with Tom Weiskopf, who was stationed in Butler Cabin. Always love a visit with Jim Nantz. 5 to know, 5 nuggets about Augusta National in the Masters tournament you might not be aware of. And then Keith Stewart from Read the Line is going to join us, trying to give us an idea of how do you handicap and get yourself set up to play players when it comes to this week. It will also include our Masters picks from the staff here at 5 Clubs. And then finally, the man who will host on ESPN on Thursday and Friday, in addition to the par 3 contest as well on Wednesday afternoon. Started his career in terms of people really seeing him at Golf Channel. And he had one of what I thought was one of the great impromptu conversations with a Masters champion in the aftermath of 1997 with Tiger Woods. Scott Van Pelt, always loving having a conversation with him. So that is your tee sheet. Let's go back to the top of that tee sheet because even though we look ahead now to this Masters week, the winners, we always celebrate them. Let's take a look across the board. One of them did it at Augusta National, but J.J. Spaun was already in the Masters field. He won the U.S. Open last year. He was struggling to a degree early in this season through the quarter pole. He had 4 missed cuts. His best result was a tie for 24th at the Players. He jumps up, plays marathon golf on the weekend, stops and starts, and he wins the Valero Texas Open, his 3rd win. Maria Jose Marin wins the Augusta National Women's Amateur, 3 rounds in the 60s, including a final round of 68 at Augusta National. She wins the junior from the University of Arkansas, obviously her biggest title of her young life and career. And then finally, Lauren Coughlin out there at Shadow Creek in Las Vegas. She wins the Aramco Championship, her 3rd win on the LPGA and her first since 2024. But let's take a quick capsule by looking at that first page of the Valero Texas Open just to give you a sense of who had a good week. And of course, it's Golf Pride. When it comes to giving you everything that you need, it is Golf Pride. But there is your Valero Texas Open first page. J.J. Spaun. He is one of two players, in my estimation, this year that really had no form coming in. Everybody else was trending, like Nico Echeverria, who did it at the Cognizant. He does it here. I mentioned the 4 missed cuts. He wins by a shot over Matt Wallace, Michael Kim, and Robert McIntyre was the guy who was shouldering the lead there for most of the week. Andrew Putnam and also Ludwig Oberg tied for 5th, another top 5 for Ludwig. He's going to get a lot of chatter this week. He should. He's played well in 2 starts at Augusta National. Kevin Yu alone in 7th. Chandler Phillips, Ryo Hisatsune. That 23-year-old young man is piling up a lot of very productive weeks on the PGA Tour. And then you see that quartet at a tie for 10th, including Tommy Fleetwood. He's the highest-ranked player in the field at the Valero Texas Open. So his form is good, headed to the first major of the year. So those are your weekly winners. That is your first page of the leaderboard. And again, we appreciate Golf Pride, the best products, the best materials around the world, trusted by more players at every level. Speaking of trust, you know, Jaime Diaz is trusted to tell stories and to get you to a place where you're like, wow, that was even better than maybe the way that I saw it. And Ben Crenshaw is a romantic who loves the history of the game of golf. Jim Nantz, same. Scott Van Pelt. And many of the moments that they've had are tied up with Augusta National. And for Augusta National being the first major of the year, you can say it's always good to go first. But let me just spend a couple minutes talking about why they are what they are. Like, how did they get here? And if you look at them historically, they are the youngest major by a margin. And certainly when you compare it to the Open Championship, the first one contested in 1860, and for the Augusta National Invitation Tournament, it was 1934. And like anything new, what road are you going to choose? And Augusta National wanted to choose the road that included a United States Open. They made the appeal to the USGA in 1933, and it was primarily the voice of Prescott Bush who said, I don't know, maybe down the road, but not now. And so the 1934 US Open, which Augusta National Golf Club wanted, and Bob Jones, not less than 4 years removed from winning the US Amateur and completing his impregnable quadrilateral at Marion, the U.S. Open was played at Marion in 1934. And Augusta National had a gathering of friends. And I don't know how much of a bump, but yeah, it was a bump that in 1935, in its second year, Gene Sarazen made the 2-on-15. But this is why, as you start to follow their path, why they are what they are, because after World War II, when you start to see winners who you know are the best players, who are iconic figures, start to dot and kind of represent the decades. Because then it was into the 50s, and it was Hogan early in 51 and 53. And he was the one who said, why don't we gather the champions and have a night before their tournament begins? And they have built maybe the most revered fraternity in terms of coming back every year, and that will be tomorrow night. And just a couple years after that, Arnold Palmer won for the first time in 1958, and Palmer and television got engaged simultaneously. And boy, was he right out of Central Casting. In the 60s, became one of 2 decades dominated by Jack. And then the 80s was the emergence of Europe, and also it was Jack's last act in 1986. And then in 1997, that really was Tiger's hello world. And he gave you all those memories, all those chapters, all those moments that he put a bow on in 2019. So the idea of where the line of demarcation is and was for Augusta National to become what it is, the proof really is every year. Because why it is what it is amplified every year. Because what happened last year is not going to happen every year. But these bold type chapters that go into the book of golf that every major writes April, May, June, and July every year are on the same line. But Augusta National does something that pushes back against a narrative or a term or a phrase, that familiarity breeds contempt. I think that only really applies with your in-laws, mine not included if you're listening. Because familiarity, really, what does that conjure in all of us? Warmth and nostalgia and memories. And that's what Augusta National does. The familiarity of the players to their moments, good and bad. And to the people who go there every year, who remember the first time they went there with mom or dad or with friends. And certainly for people who watch on television, where you were in '86, and I was in the TV room at the Sigma Chi House at Vanderbilt University, watching with my boys. Because that's what it does. And it's also the stage itself. The greatest want to get to Carnegie Hall and Lincoln Center and the Boston Pops. They all want to play on the biggest stages. And whether it be Lambeau in January or Churchill Downs the first Saturday in May, or when it comes to a fall Saturday at Notre Dame Stadium, or Bryant Denny, or Cameron in February, the first full week in April, we all, whether we're there in person or just leaning forward on all of our various devices now, because we have all these platforms that we can consume it, that first full week in April, we lean forward and lean in to this tournament. And the one other thing about Augusta National, Branch Rickey said it, that luck is the residue of design. And I love that term, and it's true in a way. And all those winners, that's not dumb luck, but there's some good luck associated with anybody who wins any tournament of this magnitude. But all those winners, that roll call, and them always adhering internally to the things that matter most all the years later, while also applying, looking ahead, and almost being clairvoyant as to giving us things that we didn't even know we needed, like not needing our phone. When did you ever think there was going to be a day that you didn't need it? Well, if you're there this week, that is something I hope never goes away, because those memories, they're going to be fully intact because you won't be distracted. They have a lot to give all of us. And it begins now, the week before, because it's a fortnight. And that young lady from the University of Arkansas that walked up on the 18th green on Saturday to have an indelible moment that will be etched into the memory of her life. And then those kids yesterday wrapping putts in on 18 and getting hugs from mom and dad and getting handshakes from the 2025 Masters champion. It's Masters Week. It's nice to have you with us here, not only on Golf Channel, but Masters Radio, normally Channel 92 PGA Tour Radio, but this week it is Masters Radio. When we continue, Jaime Diaz, he knows all these chapters expertly, one of the great historians and writers that the game of golf has. I'll talk to him about this decade. We're midway through. They're on a good run. And then we'll talk about some other items. And then bottom of the hour, speaking of historians, Ben Crenshaw, two-time champion, will be with me. Keith Stewart as well to follow. Jim Nantz, Scott Van Pelt. What a great way to start our Masters Week here on 5 Clubs. Nice to have you with us. We're back right after this. Welcome back into 5 Clubs live on Golf Channel and Masters Radio. That's Channel 92 on Sirius XM on this Masters Monday. And a little fit check from Peter Millar, lucky enough to wear the premier luxury lifestyle brand for 16 years. It is Peter Millar and petermillar.com. And when it comes to what I need, whatever I'm doing, wherever I'm going, it is the premier luxury lifestyle brand all the way to the golf course.
It's the preparation. The movements that become second nature. Precision matters. This is performance refined. Peter Millar.
And with that, we welcome in contributor not only to Golf Channel, you will see him all week on Live From, giving his perspective, also with Golf Digest as well. He is, of course, Jaime Diaz, contributor here at 5 Clubs. Good morning, my friend. How you doing?
I'm great, Gary. Great week coming up here. Yes.
Yeah, you're first. You and Nantz both pick 86. I don't know that you necessarily picked it, but the time was right for you to go there and cover your first Masters. I want to start though, Jaime, with this decade. I love talking to you about whether it's looking at periods. I know you and I are both incredibly fond of the 70s overall for a variety of reasons, but this decade right now, we're midway through it. Rory gives us the last memory, which is something we don't get much. 25 years in the making, the next career Grand Slam winner. He's the first to do it in the modern era at Augusta National. And Jaime, as we look at the guys who have won at Augusta National this decade, I believe without equivocation, all of them will be members of the World Golf Hall of Fame. I don't think they have to do anything more. That includes Hideki Matsuyama. When you consider the international player, first Asian-born player to win the Masters, his production overall, I think you would agree with that. But here's my question. As far as it being among, if not potentially the greatest decades that we've seen in Masters history, what do they still have to do, and what is the measuring stick?
Well, it's a very high bar, Gary. I mean, you go back to the 90s, every winner from the 90s is in the World Golf Hall of Fame. And then, of course, we talk about the 70s with Jack, winning twice, and 75 perhaps being the greatest Masters along with 86 or maybe 97. But, just such a really difficult thing to break into. And I think we are off to a great start this decade, but I think they got to sustain it to be in that ranking. And what'll that take? Well, probably a repeat from some of the guys who've won already, Rory, Scottie. Then you're talking about some history really being made. Somebody else, perhaps, a DeChambeau, Rahm would have two Masters and a U.S. Open. We measure these things by majors so often, but it is the easiest measuring stick. The thing now, the challenge, I think, is so much depth. I think it's harder for the so-called stars, as they did in the 60s and 70s, to kind of dominate the tournament as easily. And you see a kid like Chris Gotterup or who knows, it could be so many players. Wyndham Clark just popping out of nowhere, so to speak, even though he's got so much game, and so many guys have so much game now, that I think actually winning a major now is almost harder than it's ever been, even for the greatest players, even for Scottie and even for Rory. And so that makes it difficult these next few years to finish out the decade.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the 90s, and it's obviously it's irrefutable in terms of you look at all of them, they're all in the World Golf Hall of Fame. And it's interesting, I'm just your thought on the 60s, because the 60s was owned by a couple of guys, except just right there at the end. And in these decades where there was dominance from a couple, how do you balance that between a couple people who are the iconic figures and then this blending of the 90s where it's a collection which included Tiger's, first major in just runaway fashion? How do you balance that?
Well, I think it's just an extension of what's happening in golf with just so many more great players. However, the 60s were just such a great establishment for the Masters as far as showing this is where the dominant power players really can excel. And of course, you had Jack and Arnold, and Gary won one too. And yes, Casper and those guys, or later on, it was not necessarily those iconic guys, but I think that cadence, 60, 62, 64 was Arnold, and 63 and 65 and 66 was Jack, and Gary was 61. That first half was just something that I think lifted the Masters. People say it became a major in 54 when Hogan and Snead played in the playoff.
Right.
I think it really became an absolutely equal major when Jack and Arnold just used it such a showcase, and the television show itself was so great that it just stood out as the place you really wanted to watch golf the most.
No question that the TV part, in terms of making it what it was not accidental at all. Rory, when we start talking about these lists, and you start talking about the Hall of Fame wing of the Hall of Fame, and the career Grand Slam is real big-time, bold type. What else, from a production standpoint, where do you have him right now in your mind, and where do you think realistically he can still ascend to?
It's hard to knock him out of the top 10, but I don't think he's quite in it. but I think another major would get him in it. First of all the other Grand Slam winners are in the top 10, or at least my top 10, and I think most people's, with Sarazen being sort of maybe 10th. So I think if Rory were to win another major, it would surpass Sarazen and put him in the top 10. I think that's, very feasible. You have so many. I think he'd also surpass Faldo as the greatest European player. So another major for Rory would really be big. But that Grand Slam jumped him up probably from, let's say, 18th or 17th all the way to 11th, let's say. And the Grand Slam is just probably, if you're talking about one bauble that you'd want to have in your career to be the prestigious historical player, it would be that. And he got it last year, and that's why it was so satisfying to watch.
It's interesting that you mentioned Billy Casper because, every generation that has, some iconic figures in it, and Rory is in that class, and Scheffler appears headed to be very much in that class. And then you add Koepka and the uniqueness of his career by being this big game specialist. Xander Schauffele, with the two majors off a year that included injury, his form is going to have him on the minds of a lot of people. And if he wins, he, like Scheffler, is now on the doorstep at Shinnecock to a career Grand Slam. How do you view him, especially in the context of his peer group?
Well, again, it's a crowded field, and he's right on the cusp. Another major, and certainly the Masters would jump him probably over some people. I think right now he's behind Scottie and Rory, obviously, and probably Spieth in my mind, because I think Jordan's 2015 was so magical and in our memory so much that we just can't discount it as something that really made him exceptional. But I think he's got Koepka with 5, and I would say right now Xander's behind him, obviously. But if he were to get closer to that Grand Slam, it might, because Brooks hasn't had the greatest record in regular tournaments, and Xander would be ahead of him in that. Now, JT has got 2 the PGAs, but he's got 15 regular events that he's won, or 15 total PGA Tour events, and Xander has 10. So I think you still got to put JT ahead of him. It's just one of these things where, as Rory did, he separated himself with one key victory.
Yes.
And if Xander were to win the Masters, that's 3 with a leg at Shinnecock. Like you said, we'd be looking at him and Scottie. And Scottie, of course, being the preeminent player without the Grand Slam right now. But Xander'd be right up there. So, he's got a ways to go, because I don't think he's really, although he's had a lot of top 10 finishes, can he do that finishing round on a Sunday that really, as Rory did last year? It's a breakthrough moment that he needs. I give him all the credit for winning the 2 majors in 2024, but at the same time, there's still challenges ahead that I think he's still got to step up one more level to be in that category.
Last thing, Augusta National, there have been moments and examples that it can be kind to the elders. And there are examples not only of Jack, who, is 46, he's roughly the age of Justin Rose, who was in the playoff last year, and not unreasonable to think that he can't contend again this year. How do you view Augusta National now as a place where the elders, the older set, can have a week?
Well, I think because distance has grown throughout all the age groups, a lot of the older players in their 40s are long enough now and remain long enough. They're not as long as the real longest, although the great exception is Gary Woodland, who's actually leading the PGA Tour in driving distance. He's 41, and he just won, of course, so we can't discount him. But when you talk about Adam and Justin Rose in particular, they've kept their length. Adam in particular, but at the same time, Justin's been the most competitive as far as contending. So I think, there's just a lot of guys who, if they have their week, you have Luke Glover, you have Keegan Bradley is long. Sergio hasn't been obviously the player he was 2 or 3 years ago, but he's still a tremendous player. A DJ could even have a little opening if he were to suddenly find some form. I know these guys have been out of the mix, but I think they have enough game if they're on their game. And they're not precluded anymore from, kind of aging out as far as, I can't handle the golf course anymore, at least at 40. Certainly it happens at 50. But, we saw Phil win the PGA and at 51. And I just feel like, that's even more possible at Augusta. Augusta, they lengthened it. There was tiger proofing. The players have caught up. I don't consider it really a super long, overpowering course now. I consider it more a finesse course where, it's really about position and being able to hit shots and keep the ball pin high and do all these things with subtlety and finesse and touch. And that was always what Faldo said anyway, and he was never that long. But I think now with the length that the players hit the ball, the separator becomes, can you handle the distance and the shots to really control the golf ball? I think that's where Scottie's excelled the most. And Rory hadn't, but I think since he's changed golf balls, he's gotten better at that. And last year, he pulled through.
He certainly did. I would add, Freddie Couples had some weeks when he was hovering around 50.
Yeah.
It was nothing ceremonial about twilight in terms of that portion of his career. And of course, he's playing this week. Jaime, thank you as always. Look forward to being with you this week.
Look forward to it, Gary. Thank you.
Okay, there is Jaime Diaz. We transitioned from Jaime to a two-time champion, 1984, 1995. He was a low amateur twice, his first two starts at Augusta National, plus his view of a golf course that he has such affection for as well. Ben Crenshaw on this Masters Monday joins me next, live on Golf Channel and Masters Radio. That's Channel 92 on Sirius XM. Back with Ben right after this. Back in, it is Masters Monday, live on Golf Channel and also Masters Radio. That's Channel 92 on Sirius XM. That is normally PGA Tour Radio, with you until 10 a.m. And later on, it'll be Jim Nantz, it'll be Scott Van Pelt, who will be hosting, of course, for Jim on CBS and for Scott on ESPN, Keith Stewart as well. But the gentleman joining me now, he went there for the first time as an amateur and was a low amateur. He did it again the following year. And when he started going there as a professional, you could tell that he not only loved the place, but his performances there were as good as anybody throughout the decade of the 80s, along with Seve, and of course what Jack did. His production, 44 consecutive starts, won it twice in 84 and 95, second twice as well. He was in the final group, 87, 88, 89. I know because I was dying lousy on those Sundays. And as you can see, from 1972 to 2015, he's also, along with his partner Bill Corr, they designed golf holes that are as memorable as holes that have been around for 100 years. So it's not just a playing career that's in the Hall of Fame. His design and what they've done collectively will certainly be honored in the World Golf Hall of Fame as well. He is Ben Crenshaw, already in Augusta, Georgia. Played 9 holes yesterday. Ben, it's always a pleasure. How you feeling?
Oh, I feel great, Gary. It's great to be here. We look forward to it so much every year. And I'm just amazed at watching professional golf and watching what these guys can do. They have wide arsenals with their games. So much has been said about length, and that's always going to have its due. It's got to be well directed, but I've always thought Augusta National was a course that on and around the greens is where it is, and it's Augusta National, I think, allows players to show their arsenal of the little shots. The little shots are just as important as the big shots, and the putts have got to go down when you need them. And the little shots around the greens are fascinating. And the greens were so constructed a long time ago by Dr. McKenzie and with the help of Bobby Jones, that they were ardent admirers of the old course at St. Andrews. And I think a little bit of that is in the architecture. It's fascinating.
It's interesting, talking about Dr. McKenzie, he's gone before the first Augusta National Invitation Tournament is played in March of 1934. If he did see the golf course today, what would be for him the most easily recognizable aspect of it?
I still think the natural beauty. I think that was what was there's a passage that Bobby Jones wrote when he first saw the property, and it's just beautifully descriptive. You know, he said the drive through which the magnolia trees, and then the clubhouse, and then he said, I'll never forget my first look. He said, when I came out in the back of the clubhouse under the big trees and looked out across the property, he said, it's just as it is now. It's a tremendous sweep of property, lots of elevation change. That's very much a hallmark of the golf course. It's, I must say, some people who are long in the tooth like me, it's a hike around there. But it's not confining at all. It's beautifully spread out through an unbelievable piece of property. And the first nine was the back nine when they played it. At the first tournaments you played the back nine first, and then they reversed it, which is really interesting. But the back nine, as you know, has told the story for many, many years.
Most certainly. I'm curious, as somebody who was really, you became infatuated with the way the golf courses presented themselves, the story of you going to the U.S. Junior with your dad at the country club in the late 60s. In all of these places, and you've been trusted to restore and reclaim things on great places that may have been lost over time. Augusta National has entrusted a handful of people, and early on, Perry Maxwell, who I know you have an enormous affinity for, had a great impact on that golf course. He also had a great impact on Marion, some of the greens there, and a stretch of holes at Pine Valley. He has great original work. Tell people about what he did, in particular on number 10, that I think is the most dramatic alteration from the original iteration of the hole to what they see today.
Oh, number 10, that's an amazing change. You know, the green used to sit down in a valley short of where it is now. But there was a couple of things about that. It put the green back up on a hill, which, the first few tournaments there was frost, and that old green down in the bottom would kind of frost over. To elevate that green like it is now, it's a plateau to shoot at. It's very elusive now, and it's the green is encased with these Gothic pine trees. It's very, very. It's a sharp target, and it strengthened the hole, no question. But that was just one of the changes that Perry Maxwell made. I really think that Perry Maxwell has been an unsung hero for many, many years, and many architectural enthusiasts. His work was remarkable. Prairie Dunes, Crystal Downs. He was tremendous. Southern Hills in Tulsa, wonderful. I actually grew up on the old Austin Country Club was a Perry Maxwell course. Tom Kite and I grew up on that golf course. And it had some wonderful holes.
Yeah, it's, again, everybody who goes there, they have their places. And you're right about 10. There's something when you walk down that hill and you see those cascading loblolly pines, you're like, how's this possible? How can something look this majestic? I'm curious, these anniversary years, you had one last year because 95, and now we're a 6. So 86. In the sixes, by the way, there's some good sixes. Raymond's Runaway, you were second in 76. You finished 16th in 86, one of the few years in the decade you were not in the top 10. Were you still on the property when he was finishing?
I was, Gary. And I still think that's probably, maybe if not the most exciting Masters, because you had so many elements in there. Jack was making this unbelievable closing rush, and Seve Ballesteros, and I think that was unfortunately, the eclipse of his career. Very sad, and you could tell how much it hurt him. But you had Jack Nicklaus with that big putter, and he hit that fabulous shot on 15 across the water. And then he makes it unbelievable shot at 16, and he hits it right up there. You know, you and Jaime mentioned players of a certain age. Jack was 46. As you know, there's not too many people who contend after the age of, let's say, I was 43 when I won my last one, which gives heart to players of that vintage. I look at Justin Rose. Justin Rose played beautifully last year.
Yes.
He really did. And I think he's entirely capable. And as you say, there's enough of those guys who can hit the ball far enough, but they know what to do with it when the conditions get this way or that way. So you know, there's a lot of knowledge to play in certain circumstances, and I think that helps them.
No question. You know, it's interesting. You were talking about Jack in those moments. And when he made the putt on 17, in 95, your putt on 17 was not that dissimilar. It had wiggle in both directions like his did. And Ben, your relationship with 17 is interesting because 84, even though you won, you made bogey there in 84. You make birdie in 95, and then in 87, you hit it just over the green. I was begging for you to putt it. I understood why you chipped it. I ran it by 4 feet. And then in 89, with your club soaking wet. By the way, I went back and watched. Your tee shot on 17, you were trying to dry your grip, rubbing it between your thighs, and then of course you had the issue on 18. You had a poor tee shot on 17 and 89. You hit one of the great 3-woods ever. It landed, and Vern Lundquist just said, "What a great shot!" It just came out of the sky. What is it about that green that is so beguiling?
Well, that is a Perry Maxwell green, and his greens were they were domed, and and I think when Perry Maxwell built the green, so many of his greens, they drain away so easily, on both sides, and that green is such a beguiling. It falls off to the right back where they put the pin. If you play left of that, your shot going into the green, if it's left of that hole, you can't believe how fast it is going across that spine, and it's very difficult to pick up the speed. A lot of people have 3-putted from that situation. Very difficult to play a second shot close to that pin. But there's so many greens that I can think of
Yes.
Perry Maxwell built that they fall off on either sides.
Ben, you mentioned short shots. If Scott Hoch had made the par putt on 17 and 89, that short shot, his third, would be remembered as one of the best of all time. Of course, you made birdie, and then your grip was wet. You dumped it in the bunker on 18, and now I'm bringing you memories that you don't want to think about anymore. Memories that you do make every year is what you all do at the Masters dinner, the Champions Dinner on Tuesday night. You're the steward of that dinner. Why is the night so nourishing to all the men in that room?
I look at it, and I must say, when I get up in front of them, these are guys that I've looked up to my whole career. There's a brethren there, and as a fraternity, a small fraternity, then we just look around and say how lucky we are to be in that room. You know, each of them have different stories. it boils down to it that you have to have trust and belief in what you're doing, what your feel is at the time, and try to produce shots that, the most important of your career. And it's amazing that we've gotten through those moments. Of course, we look at Jack with 5 Masters. It may have been easier for him at certain times, but not as when you look back at all of them. You look at Gary Player winning 3. You look at Nick Faldo 3. You have to reach down inside yourself in those moments, and it's just great to that we can talk together, tell stories, and to see how we did get through. And you always think about all the people who had great chances who are not in that room. So it's really it's a festival of emotions that we can share together. That's why it's so special.
Speaking of special, Augusta National, it's all these little touches for people who go there to watch the golf tournament. Certainly, you make eagles, crystal arise at the house. I went into my library this morning before I came to the studio and peeled off from a shelf the 1984 Masters Yearbook. This leather-bound book that they produce every year, Ben, and of course that was your first year. And you go through this, and that is, they go day to day. And that, of course, is you with your fists above your head after making the 60-footer on 10, and you kind of fast walked your way to the edge of that green, like, get me off of this green. Ben, there's also a photo in there of you and your dad and your stepmom. It's like those things, Ben, I see that, and if you saw it, and if I peeled it to that page, it conjures emotion, doesn't it?
Oh my gosh. That middle of that round, that last round, I had birdied number 9, and I was looking so forward to the back 9, and then I hit a decent tee shot and a very slack second left me on the front of the green. And believe me, I was praying for a 2-putt with that long putt. And when that putt went in, it was a shock. And I had to try to calm down. I bogeyed 11, and then I got a birdie at 12, and that got back right into it. But that putt at number 10 was so improbable. And when that went in, I said, well, I've got a chance. I need to somehow hold it together.
And you did just that. It's always a treat for us, for people watching and listening to start their Masters week with thoughts from you. Thank you as always. Hope to see you this week.
Gary, it's going to be a great week. A drama is going to unfold, I guarantee you.
No question. Ben Crenshaw, 2-time champion, 1984, 1995. And again, somebody who appreciates all of it. And tomorrow night, he'll set the tone in that very special room, as he said, that fraternity. We come back, why it's so hard to do what only 3 men have done. Nice to have you with us. It's Masters Monday, Golf Channel and Masters Radio. Back right after this. Welcome back into 5 Clubs. It is Masters Monday. We're going to be with you another hour live here on Golf Channel, Masters Radio. We will lose you at the top of the hour. You will get Michael Breadshow. Michael is an assistant at Augusta National. He has immense knowledge about everything associated with the club and certainly the tournament as well. And one thing when it comes to this tournament, and a reminder, this afternoon, live from, we'll begin at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And then again, of course, in prime time tonight, that fabulous group of people, not only the people you see and hear the opinions of the entire team, it's one of the great sports broadcasting properties that we have, not just in this game, but in all of sports. 2 p.m., the first live from, and of course, prime time with Rich Turner, Brandel Chambly, Paul McGinley, the rest of that great team. So another hour for us. But one thing about this tournament is that certainly it's elusive to win. It's doubly difficult to back it up, to go back-to-back. 3 men, and this is the 90th edition, have managed to do that. Jack Nicklaus, who at that point, by the mid-60s, he had told Arnold Palmer, "You're the biggest star, the most popular guy, but I'm the best player," and he would win the most, and he won his first in 63 and then went back-to-back in 65 and 66. Nick Faldo twice in playoffs. 1989, of course, with Scott Hoke. 1990 with Raymond Floyd. And then Tiger was inevitable. 2001, which completed the Tiger Slam, and then 2002. And if you look just over the last decade, in terms of the players who have gone on to win the Masters. Let's start in 2016. We thought we were getting the 4th back-to-back. Now, I watched Jordan Spieth and walked with him a lot, and there was something precarious about his whole week, but nonetheless, nobody saw what was going to happen to him on the 12th hole. And he agonizingly finished second. Danny Willett, who won, he and Sergio missed the cut in their defenses. Patrick Reed, Tiger Woods, obviously coming back in 2020. Dustin Johnson missed the cut. If you look at Scottie Scheffler, Scottie's the guy who's been the one guy who said, well, I can more than just hang around. I can possibly do this, which gets us to Rory. And we'll talk about Rory a little bit later on when we come back in the second hour, because Jim Nantz is going to be with me, Scott Van Pelt, as well as our second hour on this Masters Monday. We'll examine maybe his biggest challenge. And if he gets in the fight, and by the way, you can't come from way off the pace, not historically in this tournament, not at all. It just goes to show you that you better be close to the first page of that leaderboard after day 1, not day 3. We got another hour to go. Keith Stewart, Jim Nantz, Scott Van Pelt. We are live on Golf Channel. It is 5 Clubs. It is Masters Monday. Good morning and welcome in. This is 5 Clubs on Golf Channel.
You are a vital part of our game.
Thank you for having me on.
All the way to the green. It was, whoo, boy, was that fun.
I've always wanted to be on 5 Clubs. Thanks, Gary.
Welcome back in. It is Masters Monday here, live on 5 Clubs and live on Golf Channel. A reminder, this is our lone show of the week. We step out of the way not only tomorrow but also Wednesday because of Live from the Masters, their first show this afternoon, 2 p.m. Eastern. Then again tonight in prime time, and of course Rich and Brandel and Paul, Todd and Les and Jaime and the rest of the great crew. Prime time every night through a Masters Sunday. And this hour, like every hour, is presented by Century Insurance. They want to be right by you when it comes to your business insurance needs. If you need yours evaluated, do it with somebody who is trusted, not to mention what they do by investing in the game of golf at every level, the First Tee, the United States Golf Association, the PGA Tour, and right here at 5 Clubs. It is Century. And this hour is also brought to you by Body Armor IV. When it comes to getting the things that you need to get you through the day, to hydrate right, to hydrate the proper way, you want to do it with Body Armor. Flash IV is packed with electrolytes, delivering faster, long-lasting hydration without artificial dyes, flavors, or sweeteners. So whether you're training, traveling, or just feeling the heat, work hard, hydrate hard with Body Armor Flash IV, and grab yours today at your local 7-Eleven convenience store. It is Body Armor Flash IV. And I mentioned the fact that it is Masters Monday. One of the things, and we had this conversation with John Cook a couple of weeks ago, and I was listening to a couple of the amateurs who played some golf over the weekend at Augusta National. John always felt that by Thursday he had played his way out of contention before he'd hit a shot. It is sensory overload, and now with the advent of not only the Augusta National Women's Amateur, and to Rory McIlroy's credit, if you do not think that the experience that the young lady from the University of Arkansas, Maria Jose Marin, had in winning, that she is then pictured with Rory McIlroy, the 2025 Masters champion. And the other nice thing is to see players who go there before the week even begins. Rory, of course, included in that, and the round that he had yesterday with his dad. And those are the types of things that, for all that has changed, and so much has, there are certain touches that still allow you to feel like I said, that nostalgia, those memories that the Sunday before as a past champion, whether it's Nick Faldo and all the years that he played rounds of golf, probably still does with his son Matt. And there is Rory McIlroy out there yesterday afternoon. Jerry still got game out there playing with Rory, and nice to see, and being somebody who knows a few of the lines that are in these various pro shops, that Smathers and Branson embroidered ball cap that he wore on Saturday, and then he wore a different color on Sunday because he'd have the responsibility of satisfying certain sponsors, that he can just wear an Augusta National Golf Club ball cap. You don't see that at other major championships, and you also don't see, whether it's past champions or the current champion who's going to be hosting the Champions Dinner tomorrow night, be somebody who's going to get there several days before the week even begins. And he also said that he watched the Augusta National Women's Amateur, and the young lady who won it last year had a similar putt that he kind of put into the recesses of his mind when he got into that position in the playoff with Justin Rose last year. And one other thing about storylines is that every major championship is they rely on certain momentum, but the week itself is such a separator, because you're culling a herd that goes in and meanders in all these other different directions as it relates to sports. But yet they narrow their focus primarily during these 4 weeks. And I do think that the other three majors, they're a little bit more reliant on trend lines and form and what level of momentum you feel like the game or the sport of men's professional golf has before you arrive at these sites. The site itself is the story. That the familiarity of Augusta National and the fact that people know the scoring opportunities, but yet the turbulence that can await on the second nine, that already exists. Whereas people have to maybe get, they have to get refamiliarized with certain places like Shinnecock, which, really 1986, even though it had a U.S. Open a million years ago, 1986 with Ray Floyd was the first chance where people said, wow. And Shinnecock looks decidedly different now than it did in 1986. But when you have these infrequent chapters, you do have to go, yeah, I kind of remember that hole. You don't forget the second nine at Augusta National. But one thing I would say about the storylines, and J.J. Spaun and I would say Nico Echeverria are the two guys in a separate category from everybody else who is headed to Augusta National in the Masters tournament this week. And that is that there are trend lines and they're real. And so unfortunately, in the case of Colin Morikawa, it was stalled out because of him having to withdraw from the Players. And then again this past week, so we don't know the state of his body, which in turn state of game. And even though you may want to, poke holes a little bit to a degree, and I get it about the iron players of Scottie Scheffler, he's not fallen off the map. His form, anybody would trade a win in multiple top fives and a worse result being a top 25 going to Augusta National, but he's different. But all these other players bring this sense that I'm close or I'm right there. Cam Young has the biggest win already this year in men's professional golf by winning the Players, and he will get a lot of attention in terms of believing that he can break through and win his first major championship. Xander Schauffele has an excellent record at all the majors. And the fact is that he is going to get a lot of attention. But somebody who can help us with that is Nantz. And when I saw his face on the screen, I said, this is unbelievable. But the reason why I've had to sit here and gas bag for 6 minutes is that we've had some technical issues. I'm not blaming this on him. He returns again to Augusta National. His first on the broadcast side with CBS was a pretty good year, 1986. Always a pleasure when he gives us some time. He, of course, is Jim Nantz. Good morning. Please let the stress level recede. We've resolved the technical issues. How are you?
I'm great, Gary. I don't know, this one wasn't on me, but this is strikingly similar to last year, and thanks for your patience. I'm thrilled to be on with you. This officially launches Masters Week for me, so let's get talking about the best week of the year. Proud
Let's
to be
do
on
it.
with you.
And you know what, Jim? Let's start where it started for you, 86. Look, I only know the moments that I heard your voice and the things that you shared and said at these incredibly crescendoing moments. Take us through that week, the things that stand out. When you arrived, what kind of rental car you had? Were your parents there? Who did you lean on from the broadcast team? Where did you have dinner every night? What are the things beyond what we heard and saw that will always be in your mind?
Well, first off, the nerves were substantial for me. I was 26 years old. I haven't felt that kind of anxiety until we were technically down for a little bit at the top of the show. But I roomed that week out in Westlake with Bob Murphy.
Wow.
It was a great player in his time, and for many years worked at 10th hole and was a regular member of the CBS golf team. I got there early in the week and just couldn't believe that I was a part of this CBS broadcast team that I had been watching since I was a young boy and always had dreamt of wanting to be a part of it. So it was an absolute thrill to be a participant in it. We had early round coverage back in those days on USA Network. So we had a couple of days to get a little more comfortable with being in the tower. I was at 16. Frank Chirkinian, the legendary producer-director, was very mindful of the fact that I was young and that I believe he knew that I was nervous, never openly talked about it, but most supportive, as you can imagine. And as the weekend progressed, just an all-star Hall of Fame leaderboard broke out. We remember it on this 40-year anniversary of Jack winning it, but you forget some of the names that were on that leaderboard, Gary. It was craziness. I mean, Seve and Norman and Price and Tom Kite and Bernhard Langer going for back-to-back, and Tom Watson and Corey Pavin and Sandy Lyle. I mean, it was just, there was a lot going on there. And of course, it all led up to Sunday, April 13th, and maybe the greatest day in the history of golf.
Did you, when the broadcast is over, anybody who gets to do this, there's a level of adrenaline that's hard to get to reseed. Did you see Tom Weiskopf? Did you talk about the interlude that you guys had when Jack backed off on 16 and you called him in from Butler Cabin and he said what he said, which was so, I mean, it was clairvoyant. He said he's going to take dead aim. If I know him, he's going to take dead aim, and my God, he did. When it's over, where did you go?
I never saw Weiskopf after that show. First off, as a young boy with not the ability to go travel anywhere we wanted, but my parents knew my love of golf and especially my love of golf broadcasting. And during my spring breaks of my youth, we would get in a car from our home in New Jersey and drive to Florida, wherever the Florida Swing was located that week. 2 days driving down there, and they would take me to the Jacksonville Open or Jackie Gleason Embury Classic or Doral. I would run around and watch these players that I really looked up to, but I really would hang out at the bottom of these towers, these announce towers. So now I'm in one, and I'm communicating with Tom Weiskopf, who happened to be one of my golf heroes, on the air. Didn't see him after that exchange. I asked him the question, Gary, what's going through Jack Nicklaus's mind before he hit his tee shot at 16, and he came back with a classic line. Yes. If I knew what was going on in Jack Nicklaus's mind, I would have won this tournament 2 or 3 times myself, which was genius. So I didn't know Tom well. I was in awe of the fact that I was working with him and, Pat Summerall, Ken Venturi. I walked back, to be honest, dejectedly to the compound because I had uttered the line when Jack knocked in his birdie putt that the bear has come out of hibernation. And I didn't know where that line had come from. I didn't have anything written down. I hadn't anything pre-planned. But it just kind of dropped out of the sky and into my head and left my lips. And as soon as I said it, I thought, where did I come up with that? Oh, I know. Someone on the broadcast, maybe it was Murphy down at 10 or Steve Melnick down at Amen Corner. Maybe someone else already said it. That's why it was fresh in my head. I just plagiarized someone else's remark. Not good. I'm never coming back here again. I had all these doubts that were kind of overtaking me for a moment. There was the euphoria of having watched what Jack had just done, and then the despair of maybe I had not said something original. Anyway, as I'm walking back dejectedly toward the CBS compound, we're up about the 10th tee. Here comes a golf cart racing up to my side. It was Venturi, who would be a profound influence in my life, who I would sit next to for 18 years in the 18th tower. And Ken said, he was just euphoric, Gary. He had just watched maybe the all-time tournament. And he said, Jimmy, how old are you? And I said, I'm 26, sir. He said, I'm going to tell you something right now. You may one day be the first to ever broadcast this tournament 50 times, but you will never live to see a day greater than this around Augusta National. Well, that moment in that golf cart really kind of crystallized what my goals were going to be in my career. He made this outlandish prediction of 50 Masters. He called me Jimmy, which my close friends and family still do. That was always my name. My dad was Jim, Big Jim. And he was euphoric. It was very parental. It made me feel good. And got back to the compound, and I saw Chirkinian. He came up and gave me an embrace and said I had done well. And I told him that I was feared I had maybe said something that had been used earlier in the broadcast. And he said, nope, only you, son, only you. You're going to be here for a long time. And truly, no one else had used that line. It just, whatever. The man upstairs gave me a line, and I went with it and set course on what now is my 41st Masters. And one last postscript on this. Yes. Here was Venturi, I didn't know very well, communicating with me and giving me confidence. And here I was on the air with Tom Weiskopf, who I didn't know very well, but I looked up to them both. Both of these great men would become very dear friends, and both of them I would deliver the eulogy at their funerals. So it's amazing how you go from just a young kid at Augusta to these relationships that grow and evolve over time. And I had no idea when I was there that day that the journey I was going to be on that would include having such a great relationship with those two men.
Wow, that's wonderful. You know, famously, that year, it was Lance appealing to Frank like Jack, and he kept begging off like, no, no, no. And then finally, you know, there he is. He's in the middle of the narrative. Last year, take people through this high wire act that Rory, he made 4 doubles over the course of the week. There's only one guy who's ever made 3 in one, and only one guy who's ever made 2 and won the Masters. So he not only the week, but that day, take us through what the internal dialogue was from the truck to you guys, to you and Butler Cabin, to everybody as that day is unfolding. And it started on the first hole when he made 6.
Well, you felt like on Thursday, he had a great chance to establish some solid footing, and then he threw away the round with 2 late doubles and shot 72. And you thought, well, there goes that story, which we were all primed for, having seen him come in off of wins at the Players and at Pebble Beach. But then he bounced back on Friday, and like, wow, that was resilient. That was incredible. And then Sunday starts, as you said, with him ceding the lead to Bryson. Those first 2 holes were not good. Things changed at the third. But there's not a lot of internal dialogue. Just to be clear, that conversation you alluded to with Lance and Frank in '86, those are conversations that the announcers are not privy to. There's chaos going on in those trucks. They're looking at hundreds of monitors and replay machines and trying to get to the right place at the right time, and they do. I mean, it's amazing what Sellers, Shy, and Steve Milton and our entire team are able to put together, but we're not hearing it. We're not hearing the chaos or the internal dialogue. And there are so few commercial breaks, as you know, those are usually 1-minute positions. And in that 1 minute, you really don't interact with your fellow commentators like you do maybe at a tour event when you have more breaks, more commercial breaks that are longer, and the mics are open during those breaks. And we are discussing strategy and things we've seen. At Augusta, you're locked in the whole time. There are no breaks, really. Even those 1-minute breaks, you're mentally still locked in. But we're not hearing what the truck is thinking. All of us, though, were in shock, particularly after the shot at 13. Nobilo was on the call there. He handled it beautifully. I thought he had thrown the tournament away. I just mind-blowing that he could miss the green from whatever it was, 87 yards, and be that far right of target when you needed to be equally that distant on the other side of the hole coming off the slope. But it was the wildest roller coaster ride. Jack's event was in 86. Jack was out in front of the leaders. Then you had to wait and see what Seve would do, what Norman would do, what Kite would do. But in this case, you got Rory playing in the final pairing, and he won it, he lost it, he won it again, he lost it again. And I mean, it was just the strangest odyssey I've ever seen in the golf tournament.
Do you think that he has any particular emotional or psychological challenge this week? It'll be emotional tomorrow night, but in a very sweet and satisfying way. Do you think he's challenged by anything from the mental side of things this week?
I think just what goes with being the champion, hosting the champions dinner. I don't want to make too much out of that. He's not preparing the meal. He prepares the menu. So he's thankfully he's on site already. He's played a practice round with his dad, who's one of the all-time great guys, and I think he's going to play with freedom. And I think that's what he will be saying to himself. He's never teed it up at the Masters with anything to prove. Now, you're always trying to prove, but he has that career Grand Slam. His legacy is cemented forever. And now he gets to go play Augusta without any downside? I mean, look out. If that back is healthy, and I trust it is, I think that this could be a very big week for him. We've only seen 3 times a player ever successfully defend. And in Rory's case, he longed for that green jacket for so many years. Going back to the near miss in 2011, and then, once he had all the other majors lined up after 2014, he had those 11 attempts to close the deal and become the 6th in history. He's got all that. Now just go out and play. I mean, you know how to rack up birdies there. Just go play with total boyhood freedom. That young boy just with a bag on his shoulder at Hollywood Golf Club, just go be that guy for the week. And I think it could be an extraordinary week for him.
I'm with you. Look, you had him at Pebble and Riviera. His iron play, there was an artistry. He was flighting shots. All the windows were open. And then Bay Hill, Saturday happens, and it's kind of like, right now we're kind of pausing, but his iron play was fabulous earlier in the year. Is there somebody that you only see this week every year who gives you something that kind of fills you with fuel, whether it's a past champion or somebody who covers the sport? Is there somebody that nourishes you once a year?
Well, the global golf media is there, and I pretty much touch all the bases. Being underneath the big tree, my favorite hang spot. I don't get a lot of time just to hang there. I truly don't. But I'll be there come Thursday morning, and that's where I'll be watching the ceremonial first shots. I think that the thing that's most special for me is just seeing some of the past champions. And it's not just Jack and Gary and Tom, who are, the biggest legends of the game. It's guys like Tommy Aaron, and seeing past champions that are around there through the years, and have had many visits, for example, through the years with Charles Cootie. And there's just a gentleness to the week in terms of just how cordial everyone is, being reunited, that feeling of renewal, springtime. But there's a lot of work to do. I'm not going to kid you. I'm not socializing a whole lot. We have expanded coverage, as you know, including on Thursday and Friday with streamers, and I'm looking forward to being a part of that. And it's just it's busier than it's ever been. Let's just put it that way. And I'm not complaining. I love every minute of it, but I don't like, this is going to sound weird. I don't like to be away from the monitors and the computer. I like to watch what's going on basically every minute. So like if I'm standing around talking to someone, I might lose for 10 minutes. Oh, what happened over on the 5th hole for Morikawa? Oh, meanwhile, over at 8 is DeChambeau. What did he do? And I'm watching it truly shot by shot. I am so into this. It's probably a little obsessive, but I like to monitor the tournament and meet and greet some folks, but I'm pretty much always moving when I'm talking. So off the air, I'm trying to get back to watch the play.
Well, gratitude is reflected in performance, certainly in yours. I know how much it means to you. Hope to see you under the tree. You're awfully kind. We'll take this one on the technical side. This one's on us. We got shortchanged a couple minutes, but thank you as always for making our Masters Monday what it is.
Thank you, Gary, for what you do for our game. You're a tremendous ambassador. And if we meet under the big tree, the best time is going to be on that slope toward the first tee under the big tree Thursday morning when 3 legends stand on the first tee and are introduced by Chairman Fred Ridley and the Masters gets underway. I will see you there, my friend.
That is Jim Nantz. His first was 1986. He returns again 40 years later. What a moment that Ken Venturi gave him, giving him comfort at a moment where he thought, you know, gosh, did I have the moment right myself? That's fantastic. We take a break. When we continue, Scott Van Pelt will join us. He has the hosting responsibilities, not only the par 3 contest, but Thursday and Friday on ESPN. Keith Stewart as well. It's Masters Monday on 5 Clubs. We're back right after this. It is the bottom of the hour on this Masters Monday, live on Golf Channel. A reminder, 2 p.m. live from the Masters, which will begin their great comprehensive full week, of course, in prime time every single night and in the mornings as well, starting tomorrow morning on Golf Channel. And this segment is brought to you by Body Armor Flash IV. When it comes to getting hydrated, make the decision to use Body Armor Flash IV, packed with electrolytes, delivering faster, long-lasting hydration without any artificial dyes, flavors, or sweeteners. So whether you're training, traveling, or just feeling the heat, work hard, hydrate hard with Body Armor Flash IV. Grab yours today at your local 7-Eleven convenience store. All right, joining me now, he contributes regularly here, giving us his viewpoint, which is not just simply about, you know, gosh, if I'm going to, you know, make a wager on the Masters. He's giving you information agronomically in terms of the setup of the golf course, trend lines as well. He is the overlord of Read the Line in Augusta, Georgia. He is Keith Stewart. Good morning. How you doing?
Gary, the overlord title is it's catching some momentum.
It's going on the business card.
I just love it. I love it. Good morning from Augusta.
Look forward to being with you. Let me ask you, you know, I look at all these stats, and I was looking at a lot over the weekend, whether it's, you know, strokes gained numbers reflected by guys who won and what they were going in. What do you think are the most valuable traits that a player has to be in possession of to have a chance to win this?
Well, Gary, and I'm so happy you asked this question and you said traits, not trends. And I think you have to be good at 3 things. You have to know the setting, you have to control your strokes gained, and you have to maximize your scorecard. Let me elaborate just real briefly. Know your setting. You know, 9 of the last 10 winners here, they've had at least 3 starts before they've won they put on the green jacket. So course knowledge, experience is more important here than any other venue on the PGA Tour. The second one is that the strokes gained factor. You know, for the last 5 or 6 years, we've had that kind of data here at Augusta National, and I think it's super important. We know all about it's a second shot golf course, but that holds true for the winners, and the secret sauce is certainly around the green. And no more than at this venue, when you talk about major championships, is approach and around the green more important. And then the last one is when you talk about the scorecard, you've got to maximize those par 4s. You know, Rory last year, he made 33s if you include the playoff, and 11 of those were on the par 4s. He played the par 4s 3 under par. Scottie the year before played them even, Rahm 3 under the year before that. You have to really be able to know your setting, Augusta National Golf Club, control the strokes gained, approach and around the green, and maximize your scorecard on those par fours.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned about trends. I was asking you over the weekend, I know how much you appreciate Justin Ray. He's mining information, and it's anecdotes, but it's data. The last 11 guys to win here hadn't come in here with more than a week of rest. What do you make of that? Is there something that you would apply to the way that you would set up your card this week based on that information?
Well, when you talk about mining, you could end up in a black hole, Gary. So you have to be careful with all of that, right?
Yes.
So my Golf Digest power rankings comes out this morning. And the lead in was that in the last 40 plus years, there's only been one player that has won who took 3 weeks off before they came down Magnolia Lane. And that's Adam Scott in 2013. So I think the trends can become somewhat of a sketchy route to go down. I need them to be able to back up with some form of recent play or data or something. Like, here's a perfect example. 9 of the last 10 winners had a top 10 in their 3 starts coming in, their last 3 starts coming in. Well, that makes sense. They had great recent form. But if you told me that 10 of the last 10 winners had a start here in the United States, well, I'm not really ready to eliminate Jon Rahm, Bryson DeChambeau, or Patrick Reed from this list. Another quick example would be 10 of the last 10 winners, a great trend. They were all in the top 25 of the official world golf ranking. Fantastic. But 9 of the last 10 winners between the ages of 27 and 36, that seems a little more arbitrary to me. I'm not going to eliminate Adam Scott, Justin Rose, or Ludwig Oberg just because of that. So I think if the trends show some form, or they show like they are based upon some logic, I think that's great. I think if you dive too deep, then you're going to end up in your own hole.
Okay, let's update our standings through the Valero Texas Open. As far as our team, Gil Hanse will be on property this week. He had Cam Young, one of the players that's given him the kind of the cushion that he's got overall. And with that, let's show the Masters picks from the 5 Clubs team. And there's a trend. X marks the spot. He's liked by half the field, or almost. Myself, you, Jay Billis, which I don't want to be tethered to Jay for any reason. Keith, your outline here is give us the one reason why you like Xander this week.
Oh, boy. Recent form and his form at Augusta National.
Yeah.
I mean, eight times he's played here. He's got 5 top 10s. 2/3 of the time you come down Magnolia Lane, you contend. The X marks the spot, Gary.
All right. I look forward to seeing you this week. Appreciate your input as always.
Gary, I can't wait to see you too, and we'll have some lunch there.
We will indeed. Keith Stewart, again, the overlord of Read the Line. All of his information, just like he said with Golf Digest, his information coming out today. We take a break when we continue from Jim Nantz, who will host on CBS, to Scott Van Pelt, ESPN, Thursday, Friday. In addition to the par 3 contest on Wednesday afternoon, SVP joins me next. Back in on this Masters Monday here on 5 Clubs Live on Golf Channel. And this segment brought to you by Body Armor Flash IV. When it comes to getting hydrated, make their choice. Flash IV is packed with electrolytes, delivering faster, long-lasting hydration without artificial dyes, flavors, or sweeteners. Work hard, hydrate hard with Body Armor Flash IV. Grab yours today at your local 7-Eleven convenience store. I'll grab several. Headed down I-77 to I-20, over the border into Augusta, Georgia. He's already there. He's been there for weeks, curating and appointing the house that he is renting this week. He, of course, will host on ESPN Thursday and Friday. In addition to the par 3 contest, he is Scott Van Pelt. Hello, friend.
Hello, friend. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, as always, for doing this. Look, you got a jammed-up week. I know you'll carve out from 9:18 to about midnight, UConn, Michigan tonight. Then you'll narrow your focus. I'm curious, as somebody who gets to do all these great things you do, and I know how much you appreciate it, the Masters, like guys who you see every other week of the year, they want to talk about this. They want to talk some golf. How do you think Augusta National and the Masters tournament over there, your time covering the sport, which began in earnest at Golf Channel, has become, I think, the most famous major? How have they done it?
It's a feeling. It's how people feel when they're here, myself included, you included. I mean, I shouldn't speak for you, but if I'm wrong, correct me, but I doubt it. It's a state of mind, the notion of getting here, and it's how this tournament delivers in such memorable ways year after year. And what it represented to Rory last year. Now, granted, you know, Spieth looks to finish the Slam, but it's in a PGA which moves from place to place. The ability to write history here that's so visceral, that's so clear in our minds. It's how this place is so clear in the minds. I had an opportunity to have a meal late last night with some folks that were going to be, I think it was about 5 or 6 of them were going for the first time. And I just smiled and shook my head and said, you have no idea. You know everything, you know every shot, you know what everything looks like, but you never smelled it. You've never felt the sun on your face when you're standing there. I said, I wish I could see you tomorrow when you're walking out because you're going to be floating. I think it's all of that. I think all of those things just coalesce in such a way that the Masters feels unlike any other thing.
You know, Scott, when the PGA moved to May, and now with ESPN, and you guys have, you know, Thursday and Friday, and then with the PGA, Saturday and Sunday early. And in the PGA, what you do, look, you're there at first light. You're there to pull the curtain when the sun's going down. It's so glorious because the whole team, and by the end of the day, there's some levity. And you're punchy. This is different. There's a civility here, and it's refined, and it's a confined amount of time. What about the exercise and the execution of Thursday and Friday for you and your team here?
Well, it's CBS's show from Cellar Shy in the truck on down, and I think, you know, Curtis and I are there to welcome folks on and to, throughout the afternoon, perhaps call a few shots late in the day, some as well. But I view my role very differently here because it is. And you spoke of the civility, Gary. I think people, you know what it's like we all had that one friend who had this amazing home. And when you went there, you just acted right. You know, it wasn't, no one had to give you a list of things to say. Don't put your feet on this table. No one had to tell you any of that. You were just psyched you got to go to whoever's house. And when you went there, you were happy you were there. You look forward to going back, and you act right. And this place, and I don't mean us, I mean everyone. I mean the patrons, everybody, the players, everyone arrives in a certain state of mind. And when I sit there in the Butler cabin, and I've shared this story before, but I'll Cliff's Notes it here. There's a moment every Thursday and Friday, just before 3 o'clock Eastern, when we come on, where I take a moment, and it's like this Zen feeling, and I think of my father who passed, and my dad and I used to watch this event, and it's the calmest I feel ever. I'm in touch with the idea of my pop. I'm grateful for where I am, and I'm very mindful of trying to be present with the idea of my dad and how thrilled he'd be that his boy was doing this job. And I don't know if that makes any sense. Maybe folks who've lost people can relate to that notion. But from that to what the place feels like to the fact that it's really light lifting from the TV side, there's just no better couple of days of work than this.
No, I certainly. First time I went was 1991 with my mom and dad. They told me I was going, sitting in the Newark airport. I wasn't crying because I was in the Newark airport, which would have been natural. I was crying because I knew.
All due respect.
Yeah, although it's much better now. No, I totally understand and feel what you're saying. Scheffler, to me, again, for somebody who gets to have this really great wide lens on sports and really dig in on all of it and get to know these people and spend time. How do you view him as a leading man in his sport?
this is an overused word, and my guy Stanford Steve and I, we've come to penalize each other for using this word. But I'm going to owe Steve some money here. Scheffler's fascinating because his talent, his appetite to be great, which is there, but then his indifference with what that appetite and accomplishment gives him, i.e. attention, success, that's fascinating. He wants to be great. Then when he is, it's like, cool. This doesn't define me. This doesn't fulfill me. My family and my faith do. And that's wild because I see in other athletes who have a greatness that is their own, a focus and an appetite to be great that's ravenous, but it seems like it's fueled by like not dark forces, but an insatiable rage to be great that when they get it, they want more of it. And Scheffler, you know, before he won the Open, he's like, man, if I win, whatever. And then he won, and then like, well, are you happy? He's like, sure, I'm happy. But then it's like, what's for dinner? And where's my family? Which has grown. And that, I admire it. I admire the ability to seek something that isn't the destination, if that makes sense. That's wild. That truly feels singular.
It's, you know, Kevin von Valkenburg wrote an extensive piece over the weekend.
It's great.
And it's great. And Rory spoke to exactly what you're saying. Rory's like, look, I didn't get into it for all the shiny objects, but it's hard not to indulge. And he goes, he doesn't care about the shiny objects. Which is spot on. Give me a couple storylines beyond the defender who gave us all a hell of a ride last year, and Scheffler. Give me some guys that you have a feeling about.
Bryson. I think I'll use an analogy from a different sport, and it'll be about that time when we get back from here for the time for the NBA playoffs. There's this widely held notion that you kind of have to take your lumps. Kind of have to learn, which is why the Spurs are incredibly compelling because of Wembanyama and the fact that they're really good, but they've never played a playoff game together. I don't know. Can they do it? Maybe. We're about to find out. Well, you come here and there's a process of learning and understanding this place, right? That it seems to be an accrued knowledge, and Bryson's gotten it over time. And he got humbled when he showed up and said, you know, par's 67. And the folks looked around like, is it? And we saw him in the last group last year alongside Rory, and we've seen him get a top 10. We've seen him win around the world recently. He's my pick, by the way. I believe that he's going to win. So he's a storyline. But as I say, you typically have to learn and accrue knowledge over time. Gotterup's brand new here, but he hits it 8 miles, and he seems to have a real nose for how to win when he's got that opportunity. I'm really curious to see how he does.
Yep.
And if I were, you know, we're not meant to root for folks, right? It's our job to cover the sport. But if Justin Rose were there on Sunday with a chance to win, I'd emotionally be thrilled to see that. Think of this, Gary. Twice in that man's life, he's gotten to 72 holes on Sunday in that very particular sunlight that we know late in the day. And no one finished lower than him twice. And he didn't win either. And that's a lot, man, because I told some of the guests at this dinner last night, if you stood in the corner, amen corner, with a pocket full of 20s and just asked passersby, hey, who'd Rory beat in the playoff last year? You'd give away money. Yeah. But not all of it. Not all of it. Because he became the wallpaper to Rory. And he's a great champion. He's a great gentleman. And he's played incredible golf here year after year after year after year after year. So, I mean, it's a wide lens. I could keep going. I know at some point you got to go, so I don't want to take up all the time. But those are just some of the stories that I'm really interested in. Yeah,
I'm just curious. One last thing, because I go back to civility. When you get on the property, if you have a public persona, you're pretty much unbothered because nobody has phones for. Is there somebody you've seen in your time there? You went, I can't believe so and so's at the Masters. For me, it was last year. It was Bill Burr. Bill Burr. And I'm like, my God, I didn't know he liked golf at all. I know he's a huge sports fan. Is there anybody you've seen who went, wow, he's at the Masters or she's at the Masters?
I mean, it's any direction you turn. It could be a captain of industry. It could be an actor, actress. All right, it shouldn't have been surprising because she happens to be a member. But this, and I'll try. I know I don't. Yeah. I need to hurry up.
Yeah.
I'm standing there and I hear a female voice behind me say, SVP. Excuse me. I turn around. It's Condoleezza Rice, and so I say, Madam Secretary, and she looks at me and goes, Condi, and I said, Condi, hi. So now it's our running joke because she couldn't be more generous with her kindness. She couldn't be a more gracious host. And so now when I see Condi, I just go, hi, Condi. And if she's sitting with people, I say, we're friends. It's okay.
That's a perfect way to put a bow on it. Thank you for the indulgence always. Hope to see you. Have a great week.
Drive safely. Look forward to giving you a handshake and a hug when I see you here on the property, all right?
There he is, Scott Van Pelt, Thursday, Friday, and the par 3 contest Wednesday. We're back right after this. Couple minutes left for us here on Masters Monday. A couple minutes left for us this week. Live from this afternoon at 2 p.m. Then again tonight at 7 p.m. We step out of the way. Live from tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning, through the week. That great property and group of people that will be covering the Masters Tournament, the 90th edition. So with that, since we're not going to be able to end our week on Wednesday, we always end our week with Dogs of the Week. We're doing it Masters style. One dog, and it is the young man who is the U.S. Amateur Champion. His mom submitted, that's Hershey. That is Mason Howell's dog, who will play with Rory as obviously the defending champion and the current U.S. Amateur Champion. The young man who is a senior in high school, headed to the University of Georgia. His dog, Hershey, was jockeying to caddy for Mason in the par 3 contest. He didn't get the nod, but he gets the Dog of the Week, Master style, right here on 5 Clubs. A couple thoughts here in the last minute. The reason why this event always is going to resonate is that there are certain places that doesn't necessarily rely on certain things. And this is one of those places, not only in sports, but really in terms of places. If you say you went there, that means a lot. And for people who get to watch, whether it's Rory in defense, Scottie Scheffler doing something that only a couple of players have done, Jack, Arnold, and Tiger, 3 in 5 years. And you look at Rahm and Bryson and the idea that those two guys could very much nose their way to the front, or somebody who has not yet won a major championship, and how life-changing it can be. Enjoy all of it from all of us here at Signature Sports Group and 5 Clubs. Have a great Masters week. We'll see you next Monday.